Welcome back. It is now June the 15th, and as you can see, we have received just barely shy of 3 inches of rain since basically Monday morning. So things are looking good now. Let's go take a look at some fields. Definitely a bit squishy out here today. Okay, on this barley plant here, we are basically almost at BBCH 33. We've got good elongation here. There's the first node there. Here's the second node right there. And just above it, there's just a little bit of a space on the third node. Once there's about 2 centimeters separation between these two nodes, we're at growth stage 33. We're not there yet, so we're kind of just at the tail end of BBCH 32. So we are still in ideal timing for manipulator or modus, but we don't have long, only a day or two left before we're kind of out of that ideal timing. So it's so wet, there's no way a ground sprayer can get in these fields for the next couple days, so we got to try to get an airplane in here the next day or two. Oh, it's a beautiful Thursday morning down here by McGrath now, and the winter wheat is looking the healthiest color that it has pretty much all season, now that it's not nearly as stressed by moisture. We are in head emergence here now, and it's 2/3 of the way up to my knee now, we'll say. So these heads have not started flowering yet, but that'll probably happen in the next week or so. But now, what I'm starting to see is down here at the bottoms, after that rainfall we had, over a week ago now, we're starting to develop some tillers at the bottom here. So that is going to probably cause some issues at harvest time, because it's possible that those tillers, now that we have good moisture, are going to be taller than the main heads and are going to be green a lot longer, which is certainly going to push off harvest timing. Well, it's a good thing I got a quad to use today, because a lot of my fields out by McGrath are accessed along dirt roads very much like this, and there's miles of them. And I don't think there's any way I could get down them in any way, shape, or form with my F-150, not without making a huge mess of everything anyways. So yeah, 2.5 inches of rain down here. Crops are starting to look pretty good now. This dryland canola down here is doing very well. However, there is a lot of weed germination in the last week or two here. We got lots of lamb's quarters and roundleaf mallow. There's some buckwheat here and there. Here's some knotweed or poverty weed. So definitely quite a bit coming up. It's time for a second application in here. And we probably don't have all that long either. This canola looks like it's probably going to start bolting in the next week or so here. So have to get on that pretty quick. Here in this plant, you can see we are already starting to bolt, so we are getting a little bit of height to the stem, and right down inside all these leaves you can see the flower buds just starting to develop down there, so we are technically bolting on that guy. Well, the yellow peas this week are looking fantastic, so they are now hitting the stage where they're starting to rapidly put out tendrils, trying to close the rows. So these guys are reaching across the rows and grabbing onto each other now, so we'll have row closure here soon. Now that we have moisture, we'll really see a boost in growth. So let's dig some of these guys up, see if we can find some nodules. Here I got some of these pea roots washed off in this dugout, and you can see we got some pretty, well, you probably can't see much because the macro on this camera really sucks, but there is quite a few little pink nodules up here right around the crown of the roots. Because this was a granular inoculant, it was placed right with the seed. That's typically the first place we start to see nodulation, but it will generally move down the roots in time. You can see this one's got pretty solid nodulation going down about 1 inch or so below the seed, a couple smaller ones farther down, but overall looking pretty good here so far. Well, now that we've had some moisture, we're really going to have to start watching for disease in a lot of the crops like barley and wheat. So far this stuff is looking pretty clean down here. I'm seeing very little sign of anything other than a little bit of scald in some fields, but now that the humidity is going to be much higher for the next few weeks, we're really going to have to start watching her. Well, the Grassland is actually finally starting to green up. We were getting pretty worried about this pasture. There was still a lot of areas that had very little to no growth since the spring. This native grassland pasture is really quite unique. It sees most of its growth in the spring, and then once it heats up in June, generally it just kind of goes into dormancy until the fall, when it can undergo another growth period as we get more moisture.
and basically we had very little spring growth because there was no moisture. But now it's actually greening up pretty good, so hopefully it doesn't just immediately go into dormancy as soon as it gets hot. We need to get some growth so we can feed some cows. Well, up here at Carmen Gay, we definitely got a lot of moisture up here, and things are looking pretty good. We have a lot of new emergence in the canola, which is really good, seeing these rows finally fill in. It only, has taken over a month. However, we do have a problem with flea beetles starting to develop in here. Some of these plants are getting hit pretty hard, so we're gonna have to come in here right away with a rescue treatment with an insecticide to take care of these flea beetles. Well, here in this dry land of Barley, this is a field that has a history of a really bad problem with kochia and Russian thistle. And so far this year, it had been relatively clean, and we sprayed an in-crop herbicide back here really early June. But now, since it's rained, the barley is looking better, but now we're having a huge flush of weeds in the canopy underneath. So we got a whole bunch of Russian thistle here that's basically emerged in the last week. There's some pretty big patches of kochia, but overall there's not too much we can do. This barley was very stressed up till last week, so it's rapidly starting to move into that boot stage here now. We have flag leaves starting to emerge, so we pretty much have very little time to do any sort of rescue treatment in here. And unfortunately, this sprayer operator has a huge list ahead of him of other priorities, so we're just going to have to hope that the crop competition wins out. Well, there's definitely some flea beetle damage starting to show up here and there, especially now that after last week's moisture, we've got some newer emergence. And some of these new guys, I mean, this seed sat in the ground for, up to 5-6 weeks now. So flea beetle protection is pretty much non-existent. So some of it is getting chewed pretty hard. You can see quite a few beetles here on this plant here. Even some of these larger ones here. These guys right down here where that flower bud is forming, there was just a bunch of flea beetles in there. So definitely we need to get these guys under control. We haven't even done herbicide in this field yet, so we're definitely going to be adding something to the tank to get these flea beetles under control. Pounce is probably your best bet, but Matador silencer can also be very effective as long as you don't have a whole lot of striped flea beetles. Oh, here I'm back in that TrueFlex canola here on irrigation with the really bad kochia patch. So this is now 2 weeks after application of 660 mils of glyphosate. And you can see we still have a kochia problem. However, it is nowhere near as thick as it was. You can actually see the ground in some spots there now. So we probably killed maybe 50% of it. And we are about to go in and hit it again. And hopefully we can take the rest of it down, at least enough for the canola to cover over it and suppress it. Well, the fall rye is heading out. Some of them are starting to flower and they're looking pretty good. I would say not quite as tall as the average year. Most of this is just up a little bit past my waist. There is some lodging and stuff in the field here, which I guess you can explain by the recent moisture and rain. But looking pretty good. But holy cow, is it ever getting full of mosquitoes. I haven't really seen mosquitoes up to this point this year, but I have now gotten my first 10 bites of the year. There is quite a few damaged heads in a lot of the rye fields this year, and a lot of this has to do with some of those late frosts that we had. In the rye, that head was already up above the crown and moving up the stem when we got those frosts, and that can cause dead spots and kill florets in that still developing head at that time. And that'll be it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.